Hello and welcome to this very special edition of E-Inspiration here on India Today. And I've moved on slightly from cricket to someone who's a living embodiment of what the show is titled. I have watched him play from 1990 onwards. For 30 years, he has worn the Indian tricolour on his sleeve. This was his one last roar season. And for once, we thought the gods were being a little unkind on Leander Paes. But now, with the US Open on, with the French Open on, and we are being told there will be crowds also, the gods can't just be too unkind on this absolute legend who's on my show today. Welcome, Leander Paes. Such a pleasure as always to talk to you. Tell me the first thing, more than that, what is this source of inspiration that keeps you going?
Hi, Boria. Namaskar. It has been a complete treat to have a career that I've had. It's been a phenomenal blessing. I'm very grateful for being in good health and good shape over the last 30 years to be able to represent our country and bring laurels to our country. I feel that, this last 4 or 5 months have been quite intriguing in the fact that I never ever imagined that a virus would spread this far wide and basically affect the whole world. I never expected that not just the corporate world, but every single one of our lives have been touched by COVID-19. And for me, sport is a vehicle to bring happiness to people. Sport is a vehicle to push my own body and my mind to different boundaries and explore different boundaries. And most importantly, sport is a way of life to bring happiness to people. And when you look at a way of life that I have led over the last 30 years, it's all been about health and fitness and quality of life. So just as we go through this lockdown and just as we go through these extended months of social distancing and keeping our elders and our young ones safe and making sure this virus doesn't spread, I think it's also important to look at playing sport with social distancing. A sport like tennis, a sport like golf, a sport like running, a sport like cycling, where you do have natural social distancing, to use these kind of sports to start some resemblance of our normalcy in our lives.
Absolutely, Leander. And now that the ATP has announced the start of the tour again, we know US Open has been announced. French Open is likely to happen. If and when the international flights do open up, and our sources tell us that maybe July end or something like that, if that happens, do we see Leander Paes taking the flight to New York, taking the flight to Paris for one last roar? Do we see that happen?
Well, I think it's still a long ways away as far as international flights opening up for commercial use. I think it's still a long ways before we see spectators coming into a stadium. But in particular for me, my evaluation of the US Open is such that the draw size has been in singles been reduced from 128 players to 64 players. The double size has been from 64 teams to 24 teams. So when you look at a reduced draw size like this, when you look at a reduced event like this, it's very intriguing to see as to how they're going to hand out professional points on the ATP or WTA tour. It's going to be almost like an exhibition style of tennis, because you're not allowing everybody in the whole world to compete. You're going to have minimized draw size. You're going to be contained in the talent that you have playing in these events. So hence, I'm still interested to see exactly how they're going to work it out. And as you said earlier, there is still a few weeks before we get to play in the US Open or get to play in the French Open, but I'm still very intrigued to see how it pans out.
Okay. And what was interesting to me, Leander, is that the French Open organizers, in fact, the president is on record now saying that some spectators will be allowed. I mean, and you have been one who has entertained spectators for 30 plus years, and they charge you up. Were you pleasantly surprised that we are starting to, maybe very gradually, but baby steps, starting to get fans back? And does that give you, the perennial hope of this country, a sense of hope?
As you rightly said, baby steps, Boria. So hence, it's great that the Bundesliga has already started, La Liga has started, the Premiership football in England has just started on the 17th. And I think these sports that have just started are real front runners in getting back to normalcy as far as us professional athletes go. I know that tennis has already started in Florida. Exhibition events have started in Germany. My doubles partner, Matthew Ebden, is already playing in Australia. So hence, I think that these baby steps that are being taken are great signs coming forward. Obviously, none of us can predict exactly how we're going to get a second wave of COVID-19 or how it's going to be contained now. And my humble belief is that we will only be safe to travel worldwide once the vaccine comes out. I think that it is imperative that the medical fraternity, with the hard work that they're doing, once they come out with the vaccine, that we can all have the antivirus. Only then will worldwide travel come back to full kind of normalcy, So I think it's still a ways away.
True.
But the French Open is announced that they will have, social distancing in the stands, and hence some spectators will come. I think with the digital medium and the television medium, people like myself who love playing for the people, to love bringing happiness to people through their hard day-to-day lives. And especially now with everyone being in lockdown for over 3 months now, I think it is no better time than to start sport with social distancing. And even if it is exhibition sport, even if it is not with ATP or WTA points, the fact that we start and encourage the community to go back into playing responsibly, to go back to work responsibly, to go back to earn a living responsibly is the real essence.
Absolutely correct. And Leander, let me ask you two critical questions. And I ask you because it's you. We've seen a very tragic incident in Mumbai with Sushant Rajput. I mean, we know that here is a successful man on the face of it, succumbing to whatever mental pressures. And it's the most, how do I put it, tragic thing that can happen. And we also know that mental health is a very, very important aspect of our sport. In your case, when you are going through a one last road season, everyone is celebrating Leander Paes, Australia, Pune, Bangalore, all of a sudden COVID, all of a sudden lockdown, it is very natural for you to sink into depression. How did you deal with this period, Leander? The mental aspect of this, because all of us need to learn from this, derive strength out of this. Can you tell us how you dealt with it?
It's been a very tough season in 2020 so far. This year has been one obstacle after the other. And for the few unfortunate tragedies that we've seen with COVID-19 deaths and with the virus just engulfing the whole world, and then we see George Floyd happening in America, and we see the uproar of the African American community there. And when we look into our own country, within our own borders, the migrant workers, not having the due daily wages to really provide for their families, and the hygiene and the living qualities that our house staff were working with. It's really kind of exposed the world's weaknesses. It's exposed the world's weaknesses in the medical field. It's exposed the world's weaknesses in the population. It's exposed the world's weaknesses in the amount of garbage that we humans actually generate, and the amount of waste we generate with the way that we've actually allowed a virus like this to really spread so wild. For me, I think that every life lost is disaster. I think that every life counts, and every human being counts, regardless of the color of your skin, or the religion that you follow, or the caste that you're from, or from your customs that you have been born into and brought up with. These are things that we are born into, but really I think it's humanity's responsibility to come together as a human race to keep our communities safe, to keep our communities happy. In that being said, to answer your question specifically, I myself do a lot of work spreading the word of emotional fitness and mental happiness. I think these are two things that are so neglected, especially in our own country. We've heard some of the stalwarts of sport and the entertainment industry speak up. One of the champions that I follow very closely is Deepika Padukone. She's spoken up very vociferously about this. And for a young woman who's at the top of her game to come up and so confidently speak openly about her own issues is very bold. I respect her tremendously for the ability to come out there and help others through her life. And these are the things that I have done through my career, is to share the ability of staying mentally happy and emotionally happy.
Leander, if I can ask you that, and this I ask you because both you and me, we share the same skin color. I mean, sport is one of the vehicles to protest against this pandemic, which has raged in our world for 300 years now, the discrimination based on color. Have you ever faced it? And if you did, how did you counter it? I mean, what is your take on this whole uproar that we are seeing? Why is it that a 21st century world will still have to face this? Your thoughts on George Floyd and the way the EPL has responded, the International Cricket Council has responded. How are you as a tennis player, a super champion and icon, responding to this challenge?
Firstly, I think that what happened to George Floyd was disgusting. I have seen the video several times, and it's amazing how the responsibility of power is such a important part to recognize. I think that when you watch that video, and I'm sure you've watched it yourself, he kept on saying, "I can't breathe." And for those 7-8 long minutes that was there, and regardless of what his crime so-called was, I feel that there is a certain dignity a human being's right has. I think there's a certain dignity and treatment that we need to give out to another human being. And it's very worrisome to look around the world and to see the discrepancies of whether it is the color of your skin or the caste difference you come from or the birthright that you have or don't, where we as humanity are responsible for our keeping our community safe. You know, I mean, what my father and my mother
have faced it?
Or what? I faced it subtly. I have faced it a few times, very subtly. And I don't think I have the personality where people can actually come straight to me and do it. But that being said, I think playing a global sport all around the world and traveling since I was 12 years old, I can talk to you about a few incidences that have happened. But obviously, it's happened very subtle.
But how did you deal with it? Because give me the courage. I mean, if somebody is listening to Leander Paes, not everybody has your strength, Leander. How, when even if it is subtle, how did a Leander Paes deal with it? How will Boria Majumdar deal with it? How will someone who's listening to you, a young tennis player aged 15 to 20, traveling around the world, deal with it?
Well, I've had some wonderful parents who have taught me about such things. They were professional athletes traveling the world in their global sport as well, of hockey, basketball, and so on and so forth. I feel like the way that, my parents, my stepmother Juliana has taught me about dealing with situations like this has obviously held me in good stead. I have a daughter who's 14 years old, and she wants to be a professional tennis player and an Olympic champion. So the skills that I've learned, I'm trying to share down with her. Now, being a young Indian girl and at the same time playing a sport like tennis, she's going to travel the whole world, and God forbid that she ever faces something like this. I've got to equip her with the skill set of, one, diffusing a situation as fast as she can, diffusing the situation and moving on. Two is to make sure that you're in environments that do not allow these situations that happened with George Floyd to happen. I've lived in New York in the late 80s, early 90s, and I know how rough it was back then. And now it's a lot safer, but still, I mean, in the back streets of Mumbai or in the back streets of any city in India or any city in the world, if you're in the wrong place or the wrong time, you're going to get into trouble. I already have a scar on my left chest to prove when I got mugged in New York. But that being said, you've got to learn the skills on how to diffuse situations, learn the skills on how to be in the right place at the right time and not delve into places that are dangerous. and at the same time to protect yourself. When you look at an internal mental toughness or an internal self-confidence, the way you carry yourself is important. The way you communicate with others is important. The way you teach others to respect you is very important. Not everybody out there is your friend. And it's important to have that distance to teach others on how to respect you.
Leander, tell me something. 1 year down the line, if we do have the Olympics, perhaps the only athlete ever will have a chance to play 8 games. Does it still sort of lurk somewhere around the background that you can do it? Do you still believe in that? I mean, one Indian athlete, 8 Olympic games spread over a 33-year-old career. It will not happen again in history, perhaps. Do you still believe you can do Tokyo 21?
Boria, you've known me a long, long time. You've been with me to several Olympics and several special occasions, and our friendship is something that I am very protective of. That being said, playing for our country moves me immensely. When it came to playing against Pakistan in Pakistan recently, I put my hand up so I could motivate the other boys to go. But yes, it was important to take the right steps to make sure we were safe. The ITF themselves then moved the tie to Kazakhstan, where we went and played. And we came back with the win. When it comes to playing in the Olympics, I've lived my whole life to represent our flag and our people. And being that first Olympian after 44 years to win that individual medal in Atlanta, and being the only tennis player to win an Olympic medal, and also to have the world record for India of 7 consecutive Olympics in a row, to take that to 8 Olympics and make sure that India's name is etched forever in the history books. That India has got an athlete who has played the most number of Olympics, and it's going to take a tall order for someone else to beat that, is something that moves me a lot. Now, the Olympics are a long ways away, and it has been moved to August of 2021. But at the same time, with the way that the economy has been hit all over the world, I'm still interested to see whether Japan will hold the Olympics in 2021. And if they do, it will definitely motivate me a lot to make sure that India's record goes in the history books forever.
Fantastic. All of us will. In fact, from what I know from my sources in the IOC, the Olympics should happen. Sitting here in middle of 2020, the preparations have not lagged. The IOC is working out stuff with the WHO. If the vaccine does come, and now even WHO is on record saying the vaccine should be there by the end of 2020. No guarantees, but hope is there. So we will expect Leander Paes in 2021 in Japan, and I will actually be there supporting Leander Paes. Lee, what is the legacy? You've had a career where you won everything. Grand Slams, multiple tournaments, Olympic medal. Post this, have you thought about it? You mentioned education. What is the legacy that Leander Paes wants to leave behind in the next 5 years from now? Will you come back to coaching? Do you want to give it back to your own sport? Do you want to nurture the next Leander Paes? How do you want to go about your career? Do you want to inspire this country? Because you do. How do you want to go forward?
I am actually smiling because of the options that you just went right through. And sometimes having too many options is not a good thing. It's very important to focus. And the last 7-8 years have been very hard for me. And I've managed to keep my head above water. And right now, this lockdown of COVID-19, as hard as it has been for all of us, I myself have lost 18 very close family and friends to COVID-19. And it's not been easy. To be there for their families, to be there for the people that you care for, is really the need of the day. It's the calling of the day. So I've put my tennis career and my one last Roar season on the back burner for the moment, Boria. And whether it is the Olympics that really moves me, as I just said, or whether it is I'm 4 Grand Slam main draw shy of having played in 30 years, having played 100 Grand Slam main draws. Another world record for India and myself. So this also moves me, and really right now, the essence of sport and fitness is what's keeping me going, to stay fit, to stay happy, to stay mentally healthy, emotionally peaceful. That's what I do today in this lockdown. But as the lockdown opens up and as these baby steps become big steps, I will reevaluate with my team about coming back in the 2021 season. But definitely those two things, those two world records move me a lot for me and for India.
Last question, Leander, before I let you go. It's been an absolutely fantastic chat. You and Mahesh Bhupati, the two champions together, you all did this very interesting social media thing where you all, on social media during lockdown to keep people healthy and happy, you all did a kind of a challenge. And it was incredible, the two champions coming together. Ever a thought in your mind that that's something maybe you would have changed in the course of your career? Maybe the two of you could have played a little bit more for the sake of India, could have won a few more Grand Slams now that both of you are past it?
There's no doubting that Mahesh and myself are very, very different as human beings. We're very different in the way we live our lives, or the way we conduct our business, or in the way that we communicate. That being said, I have tremendous respect for Mahesh and what we have achieved together on the tennis court. When you actually look at when Mahesh and Leander come together, we create magic. And a couple of the instances in our lives where, either I've had a tough time and he's come through for me, or he's had a tough time and I've been there for him, or, when you put us on a tennis court together to play for India, we've always created magic. We've got that world record for the most undefeated wins in a row in Davis Cup together, and Leander and Mahesh is all about magic. So through the lockdown, through the phases of lockdown with COVID-19, we kind of reached out to each other and did that frying pan challenge, and it was amazing the amount of interest that it got, and at the same time it kind of brought us together. We go through spurts of time, years where we don't really speak, and then suddenly we'll come together and it'll be magical again. So sure, to answer the other half of your question, I feel like both of us worked so hard to win Grand Slams for India and to prove that two young Indian boys could be number one in the world in our field. And we did that very successfully. But at the same time, with how life played out for us, we went in two different directions with our two separate teams. And I feel like both of us could have done something better. I take full responsibility for my 50% that I could have done better in communication, or in maybe some decisions that I made to maybe prolong our career longer, or to maybe protect both these two young Indian boys who had a dream from the age of 18, 19 years old to be world champions, and we got there. But then to be able to replicate that and have really long careers together would have also extended the dream. But that wasn't meant to be. And at the same time, I am very fortunate to have a friend like Mahesh in my life. I am very grateful for the hard yards and the hard work that he put in, and the belief that he had that I approached him first to say, let's go win Wimbledon together. And after that initial laugh that he had at me, because he thought he always thinks I'm crazy when I come up with these ideologies of let's go win Wimbledon together, let's go be number one in the world together, let's prove to India we can be champions. But the hard work he put in is something I respect, that he did. And that's what got us the history that we have today.
I don't think I have anything to ask. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. The name of this show is Inspiration. If there is ever an Indian athlete you need to look at, with almost a broken hand, he goes and wins Atlanta. At 7 Olympic Games, if God is willing, there'll be an 8th one come Tokyo 2021. Davis Cup, 100 Grand Slams, creating synergy on the tennis court, which is like the magic Pied Piper. This man will forever remain immortal in the annals of Indian sport. And we use the word great rather flippantly. Here is one who is a great, will forever remain a great. Leander Paes, as always, absolute pleasure having you on my show. You are an inspiration. You will forever remain an inspiration. Thank you very, very much.
Namaskar, Boria. Thanks, guys. God bless.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.